That's right, Greg, and when the pros are so tight, that means it comes down to the AMs in these Pro-Am lineups to make the difference. And a real difference maker the last time this championship was in action on the other side of the country at VIR, that was George Kurtz. You picked up your first overall GT3 win in the last round of the championship back at VIR. How much of a boost was that, and what is the significance of that accomplishment?
Well, it was a huge boost for us. Colin and I have been working at this for a while, and last year was a building year. We finally got the car that we like this year, and with the Evo kit, it's been fantastic. So just to see all the hard work come together and get that overall victory was a real accomplishment for us and the entire team.
Enough about the past. Let's focus on what's about to take place. It seems like, based on the race yesterday, this Mercedes has good pace over the course of a stint. Tire degradation, always a big story here at Sonoma, but maybe you guys a bit better positioned than some of the other manufacturers.
Yeah, I mean, the car's been good. It's like anything else. It's hard on tires here at the track, and it's super hard to pass. And we have decent speed, but it's a hard car to race just the way it's configured. But we're going to do our best. Colin did a great job, put it on pole for our class, and you know, he's one of the best guys out here. So I feel confident that we'll have a good showing, and we'll see what happens at the end of the race.
Good luck.
Thank you.
When we first looked at the opportunity of working with CrowdStrike as a technical partner and as our security partner, we knew it would help us in this world that we live in today, but we didn't realize how much it would help us to be secure in a post-COVID environment, or as we have to exist today, as we all say, it's a new normal that we have to operate on. When we were very impressed with CrowdStrike, with the ability to quickly respond in seconds to threats, that's been a great aspect of our partnership.
Hello, I'm CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. Coming on as title sponsor with the SRO has allowed us to create new innovation, to use our technologies in ways they've never been used before. The cloud is very capable. All of these 195 services that we offer provide vast different capabilities, but customers come up with even better ways to use it than we ever thought of. In the case of the SRO, we're going to be bringing better experiences through to the TV itself. Second screen experiences where we're going to be doing a lot of predictive analytics and things like that. These are the types of things that we want to see our customers from AWS actually do, and by partnering with the SRO, we're introducing it to a whole new venue and to sports cars. We're bringing a lot of excitement to it as well, and when you have excited fans that are getting a better experience and we're able to showcase the technology that AWS has doing that, I think it's a win-win for SRO, for us, and for the fans that are actually engaged in the watching of the event.
Hey, George Kurtz here with the '04 CrowdStrike DXDT car. Just a quick recap for today. The stint was pretty good. Unfortunately, the tires ran off a little bit sooner than we'd like. But we got the car in good position for Colin. He was fast, and we came away with a third place podium. So I think overall, pretty good finish for today, and we'll be back at it tomorrow.
Hey guys, Colin Brown here, driver of the '04 CrowdStrike Racing DXDT Mercedes. Give you a little recap of race one. Ended up on the podium with the third place finish. We were pretty happy with that given the way the race unfolded. It seemed like some factors out of our control played a big impact on how the race fell. That's why we race, that's why we go to the racetrack and do this. But all in all, a solid day. Happy to have a good podium and looking forward to tomorrow.
CJ here, right after race 2 here at Sonoma. As we wanted to do yesterday, we went out and got a little bit better start today. Although I lost contact with the pack for a little while, we were able to actually maintain the tires under the car. I could say mission accomplished for today. We made the podium, we got a third place, and now I guess tomorrow we set up and try to go out and keep moving up that podium.
Hi, I'm Kevin Boehm, driving the number 9 TCA Civic with CrowdStrike Racing. Today we had our second race of the weekend, and it went really great. I started third and fell back just a little bit at the start after all the positions got shuffled around, and was able to put my head down and chase down the leaders, and still really happy with the fourth place finish today. Tomorrow we'll have one more race, and I think I put down a lap fast enough to start second, so hoping for a little bit better position tomorrow.
It's a beautiful summer afternoon here at Sonoma Raceway with temperatures in the 80s, a cloudless sky, and thundering racing machines preparing for battle on course. This is GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS at Sonoma Raceway, sponsored by CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike Friends and Family, this stream is just for you, and in just a moment, we'll head down to the track and take a deep dive into data. We're going to utilize the P1TS software to analyze position, pace, strategy, and more during the 90-minute event this afternoon. Welcome to CrowdStrike Racing. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer of Amazon Web Services, and Kevin Boehm, who races the number 9 HPD Civic SI, TCA, and SRO America's Touring Cars Series, and is also a senior engineer at Honda R&D. Yesterday, we watched an intense battle in the closing moments of the first GT3 race of the weekend as second-place Jerome Bleekemolen held off Max Root and the charging CrowdStrike AWS driver from DXDT Racing, Colin Brown. But the race also had other dramas, including a late race caution and pit road penalties, CJ.
Yeah, yesterday that's a great race because those types of things are actually what makes or breaks a race. I'm sure that the Acura team regrets making the call and getting in early, and therefore having a bit of an issue that caused them to lose the overall win yesterday. You know, and then we get towards the end of the race and we have that full course caution that really shook things up. As we kind of predicted yesterday, that get a full course caution towards the end, it stacks the field right back together, and off you go, and everybody's racing at it and trying to crawl their way to the front. So I think we might have if we're lucky, we'll have another show like that today.
Absolutely, and Kevin Boehm joins us as well. And Kevin, this morning you had another podium in your TCA Civic, and a great battle out there. But now it's time to analyze some GT3 racing.
Right, it was a great race earlier today, and I'm sure we're going to see some close action here in the GT3 cars as well. So they're out on their outlap right now trying to warm tires and kind of get ready for the start here in a few laps.
And as we get ready to go racing, we're going to get to dive deep into the data with the P1TS software provided by Ken Lin, which runs in the AWS cloud. And of course, AWS is the title presenter for the Global SRO Series GT World Challenge powered by AWS. For 13 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 175 fully featured cloud computing services. Last year, the firm entered into a new collaboration that saw AWS become the official cloud and machine learning provider for SRO America, as well as a series partner of Pirelli GT4 America and TC America.
Hello, this is Maxwell Root.
And thanks again to CrowdStrike, the official internet and cloud security provider of SRO Americas, and is the presenting sponsor of the Sonoma Race Weekend. This is a home race for the CrowdStrike folks this weekend, guys, based in the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley. And of course, effective cybersecurity means you see and stop threats like hackers as fast as possible. That's why every second counts, not only in security, CJ, but also on the racetrack.
Yeah, that's why the matching of the two actually is so good, is because insecurity, the idea being that, every second that you have someone that's in your network or on your system, they can cause greater harm to your environment. So you want to prevent, and if not prevent, be able to quickly identify and root them out of the systems. And that's what a lot of the CrowdStrike software is able to do and the services they provide. We use them at AWS for exactly that reason, because obviously we have customers around the world that are, customers everywhere from very small businesses all the way up to, matter of fact, the U.S. intelligence community runs on AWS. So we go all the way from normal commercial entities all the way up through to national security types of data. And, we use the same types of software to protect that national security data as we do the data that we create here on the track and that the SRO provides. Obviously, we're watching a lap here by Max Root as he heads around the about 2.5 mile Sonoma Raceway, and we actually got a track map of our own here this afternoon. Just under 2.5 miles here, guys, but the big discussion about this layout, and Kevin, this was a big corner for you earlier today, was turn 9 and 9A, that chicane at the top of the screen. A different layout than is normally run here at Sonoma. This is kind of the FAA homologated layout, but tell me a little bit about that chicane in particular and how it's different from the normal course.
Right. It's normally the kind of other series kind of use the high speed S's through there, but IndyCar and the FIA certification prefers this chicane, which kind of opens up a straightaway and ends up adding a passing situation. So 9A, the cars have to slow way down, and what that does is it allows someone to try to brake a little bit later than the car in front of them and try to make a pass happen.
And we're seeing the cars filter their way through there right now as they finish up their warm-up lap. We're about to turn them loose and go green again. Once we get cars on the timing and scoring screen, we'll take you to P1TS and show you all the data in real time. We can analyze race strategies in this 90-minute GT World Challenge America event. The second and final race of the weekend. And on the outside of that front row is, of course, George Kurtz in that number 04 CrowdStrike machine. And they're about to go racing here, guys. Sonoma Raceway, it's a beautiful afternoon. Track temperature about 115 degrees. You can cook an egg on there right now. Going to be hot and slick, keeping tires on the car so important. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Sonoma Raceway for the final time this weekend as they charge up the hill towards turn 2. Into turn 1, the 93 Acura NSX. Actually, it's Colin Brown in the 04 to start the race. Sorry about that. But Trent Hinman out front in the 93, going to pull away. That car had a big penalty yesterday, CJ, for entering pit lane too early. They got themselves a big stop and hold that put them behind the 8 ball, but now out front, going to try to run away from Colin Brown.
Yeah, they're going to try to make up for the mistake that they had yesterday, without a doubt, because those are the types of things that'll sting them forever if they make good on it today and, are able to come home, with a win. That'll make it feel just a little bit better.
And down into turn number 5, Kevin, this is such a crucial corner to get these cars to rotate and head down to one of the passing opportunities at the far end of the racetrack, a hairpin corner. So important to get out of turn 5 well and get down to the braking zone for the next one.
Right, the braking zone is in turn 5 is really, really tough because it's a little bit bumpy and you have to track way out and then slow back down here again. And in the end, you're really close to the other cars and going really low speeds. So you can't use the aero on the car or any of that. You're just relying on the grip from the tires.
And you see right there the number 1 of Rodrigo Baptista holding off Siegel and the number, their 5th place car, the number 24. And those cars were kind of spread throughout the field yesterday. There's the 63 car. That is the Ryan Dial machine. That's the sister DXDT Racing machine to the 04 of Colin Brown as they head down towards the hairpin in turn number 11 to come to the conclusion of the first lap. And we did, I don't know, somewhere in the 40s laps yesterday, somewhere around there. But when we get started here, guys, the cars are going to get close together, but they're going to spread out throughout the race, and we can analyze those gaps as they form with the P1TS software.
Yeah, the lap times yesterday, we were seeing right around 140s with faster laps getting down into the 39s for sure. And then as the tires start to degrade, you'll see creeping up from there, 42s, 43s in that range.
So as for Sonoma Raceway, Kevin, you were out track this morning along with CJ in the TCR and TCA race. What's the toughest part of Sonoma Raceway? We already talked about 9 and 9A, but what is the trickiest corner, at least in your TCA setting?
Yeah, I think it has to be the turn 1 and 2 section of the track because you're going uphill. You're going kind of the highest speeds that you reach on this entire track, and then you abruptly go uphill and over a bumpy surface, and you need to at some point start slowing down. So it's really hard to find that exact spot and keep the car under control as you arrive at turn 2.
So as we continue to watch the beginning of this race unfold here, guys, some of the other things that you guys were involved in earlier in the season, was the Assetto Corsa Competizione GT Rivals Championship. I know both of you had a little bit of experience in that earlier this year. CJ, tell me a little bit about the simulator and how important of a role that plays in your ability to learn racetracks before you get to them. Obviously, Sonoma, not one of those tracks in the sim just yet, but maybe there's things you can learn from other tracks like it.
Yeah, that's the big thing is you need to be able to know which way you're going to turn left and right, so you get a little bit of mental, memory, some muscle memory, if you will, to be able to know which way you're going, so that the first session you get out there, you're actually somewhat up to speed. I didn't have a chance to actually use the sim for Sonoma, especially for this layout. So when I got here, I'd never turned a lap. Well, I got a ride along lap one time with Mario Andretti, but beyond that, I never actually driven a lap myself. So it took me a few sessions just to even familiarize myself so that I knew which way I was turning. With the turn that Kevin was just talking about, turn one up into two, you're pretty well flat out. You get to the brakes and then basically turn right, slam the throttle down, and can't see where you're going. So it takes a little bit of a guts to do it as well, and to figure out when to go to the throttle without plowing off the back of the back of the turn. In a simulator, if you have that, you're actually able to get some of that down ahead of time. Here, I actually had to do it in real life, and it takes away from the time where you can actually get better at the real track. So it's just like doing all your preparation, doing your homework before you get there. And if you can use the simulator to do it, you can come off and be right on your game right away.
There's Colin Brown in the CrowdStrike Mercedes AMG GT3 sweeping through the S's here at Sonoma. Kevin, obviously you had a little bit of actually a great run several times in the GT Rivals series. So beyond the simulator, though, how do you train for a race? I mean, obviously there's some value to the sim, but there's also some physical and mental training that has to happen for you to be at your best in the race car.
Right. I mean, the biggest thing that you do is to try to have a clear mind going into the races, and physically these cars it gets really hot on the inside, so it's kind of personally I like to do a lot of running and kind of the heat of the day to try to get my body used to the temperatures that you see in these cars, and that plays a big role. And then I think a big role other than sim racing is just the mental side. It's really just being kind of mentally ready to push the car to the limits and be able to stay in control at the same time.
So while we're getting rolling here, we're taking a look at one of the G22 class cars, and I don't think we really covered this a whole lot yesterday, guys, but there is a pretty sizable multi-class nature to this series. And what I mean by multi-class is that there are cars out on track with different kinds of driver lineups, CJ. And the lineup that we're working with Colin and George today is the Pro-Am lineup. And there are 5 of those cars in this field. And Colin Brown in the 04 CrowdStrike Mercedes, the leader in the Pro-Am class, but Trent Himmen out front, part of the GT3 Silver class. They're out there on their own. Maxwell Root in the 20 GT3 AM car is in his own class as well. So multi-class nature, you're not directly racing with everybody out on track, even though you're sharing the track at the same time.
Yeah, and as we saw yesterday, obviously all those classes do impact each of the other classes, especially as we saw yesterday. Max out there as an amateur, but came home third overall. By coming home third overall, obviously he was out there in the mix of the Pro-Ams, the Pro-Am class cars, and the problem with that was he was out there with the pros, and then in the mix in the middle, and that actually can cause a little bit of a challenge, because I know that at least for myself, it's multi-class racing. Sometimes you get a little frustrated with the other classes, but it really comes down to they can't hit the disappear button out there. There's Sonoma's a very hard track to pass, just in general, much less when you have different classes that are out there. So there's a little bit of a challenge. When it comes to the GT2 class cars, I actually own a GT2 car, so I'm pretty familiar with it. The car has amazing straight line speed, but it has about the same aero as a GT4 car, which isn't much comparatively to a GT3 car. So you'll see the GT3 cars on this track, especially, given that there's not much of a straightaway. They're going to go around there and they're going to have great lap times, and you're not going to see the speed that the GT2 cars can really put down.
And we'll show you on P1TS here what that class structure looks like. On the left-hand side of the screen where the cursor is here, you will be able to see the different class color variations here. So the 93 is currently the overall race leader, but Colin Brown leading in Pro-Am. That's the red background with the white numbers. And Jerome Bleekemolen right now, Kevin, about 7.5 seconds back. So Brown already establishing a lead, which is going to become really handy when we have our halfway pit stop and change out drivers.
Right now, I'm sure Colin is trying to push as hard as he can to stay close to Trent Hinman because, of course, he wants that overall win as well. But at the same time, he's having to really manage his tires and not push too hard that he has to slow down at the end of his stint.
And Rodrigo Baptista in the number 1 car back in 3rd in class. We're taking a look at him now on the screen, and that Ferrari 488 is a pretty quick race car as well. And there's Jeff Siegel in that car, right in behind. So both those Ferraris have the 63 Orion Dial in behind, and CJ, the team cars right now, the DXDT Racing Machines Dial, approaching these two Ferraris. And we saw yesterday a lot of drivers holding each other up and causing these tight-knit battles.
Yeah, that's the obviously a lot of these cars are pretty even in lap time overall, but how they make the lap time is sometimes very different. We talked a little bit yesterday about how the Mercedes itself likes to is pretty fast using the downforce and making up time in the twisty bits, but as soon as you get to any type of straightaway, its big front profile actually holds it back a little bit, as well as the BOP, or the balance of performance, as we like to say, doesn't have as much power, or legs on the straightaway, as we like to call it.
Right now we're looking at the gap chart on the P1TS software. The 0 line at y = 0, that's that blue line where the cursor is. That is the race leader for Pro-Am Colin Brown in the 04 CrowdStrike Mercedes. The other drivers behind are the number 14, the 1, the 24, and the 63. And you can see the 1 car is that lead Ferrari in that battle we are watching on the screen, and how much he's holding up that 24 and 63. Kevin, that's going to increase the desperation for those drivers in behind as they see the 14 start to drive away.
That's right, and Sonoma is a really hard track to pass, and you can see how the red and white line are basically just matching the pace of the orange line there. So they're definitely getting held up, and what that's doing right now is it's helping the 04 car kind of pull a lead.
And so let's talk about this from a strategy perspective, CJ. If you're one of these drivers in behind the number 1 car, let's say you're still back here when the pit stop window opens. Maybe this is a warning for you that you should come to pit lane earlier so that you don't lose time behind those drivers in front of you while you're waiting for your pit stop.
So absolutely, that's one of the strategies that could be played out. The other strategy is that today, unlike yesterday, we have for the Pro-Am drivers, we actually have the pros in the car first. So you have a 10-minute pit window. So many times what you'll actually have is a lot of the Pro-Am teams, when the pros are in the car, the pros will stay out there until the very last lap that they can to be able to come in before the pit window closes. Having your faster driver out there on track, even if they're being held up a little bit, it's just a matter of, actually, this is where software like Ken's software here, the P1TS, gives you that information you need to make a decision. Are you being held up enough that your AM driver can actually drive faster than the amount of time you're being slowed down?
That's a really good consideration there about switching out the Pro and Am drivers, and you see this battle continue, rocketing down into turn number 5. And I think on the other track map, this is turn 6. The numbering's a little different than I remember. So they got turn 8A and 8A and 8 and 9A, and it's like alphabet soup out there with all the different corner numbers. But there's a couple different layouts here at Sonoma, and we're using one that, again, I mentioned earlier, isn't normally used a lot. This particular layout, it's sort of a conglomeration of just the regular full course and the IndyCar layout.
Yeah, this layout is actually an FIA-approved layout, and that's why they're using it, because the SRO is an FIA-approved organization. That's part of the reason why you see this layout when we're using it, as well as when you see other FIA organizations that are running.
So into turn 9, you see right now the number 14 and then the 1, and a whole bunch of other cars stacked in behind as they come out of 9A and head down to turn 11, which, Kevin, we talked about turn 11 as the passing zone. And we've seen a lot of drivers utilize the ABS in all the different classes this weekend, charging into turn 11 and trying to pull up underneath, but you don't carry quite as much of a run into this corner as you would on the other layout.
Yeah, believe it or not, the brake zone for turn 11 is really, really slippery, so you have to be careful not to get too much into the ABS. It's okay to use it as like a safety net, but if you fully rely on it, it's possible that you may miss the apex a little bit. So it's tempting to just go in and stomp on the pedal as hard as you can, but that doesn't work out every single time.
Well, you can see on screen the white box surrounding the 04. That is the Pro-Am leader, Colin Brown, as he heads through turn number 5. And in behind, you can see that grouping with the number 63 at the top of the screen. Well, that's that trio of Ferraris and Mercedes that are stuck in behind, and they continue to lose ground as we go throughout this race here, CJ.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where it seems like the front car is actually holding the two cars behind them up. Sonoma's a tricky track, and when you're trying to make your way around, unless you have a really good run, it's hard to get by. If that front car wasn't there, I think these two cars would be able to set sail and actually
on
catch
the
up to the
radio,
pack.
complaining of a general lack of grip, not front or rear, but just a general lack of grip. And the team thinks that they just missed on the tire pressures a little bit. And perhaps the good news here is these pit stops, there's not a whole lot you can do in terms of adjustments, but you can certainly make a tire pressure change when you put the new set on. So they've got some plans in mind, and they think they might be able to get that thing dialed in for Martin Fuentes when he gets strapped in a little bit later.
So we continue to watch this battle down into turn number 11. We're about 15 minutes into this 90-minute race here, CJ. So as we continue to watch these guys battle, we have car off. That's one of the GT2 Porsches over at the top of turn number 2. Here's a replay. Oh, he was way off going into turn. Whoa!
And he hit his teammates. These are two GMG GT2 RSs. Yeah, it looks like he coming up 1 into 2 got hot and got loose, and that's Stu Frederick in the blue and in yellow. And his teammate there in the white car. So, yeah, that's unfortunate. Two really fast, great. I think they only made less than 100 of those cars. So, not a good situation, but I'm sure the James Fronis and team will get those cars fixed up and back out for Road America.
Sure, the only concern now is that car disabled at the top of turn 2, Kevin, might prompt a full course yellow. Only 15 minutes into the race. How does that change your strategy when you get a yellow that soon, if it were to happen?
Well, I mean, I'm fully expecting a caution in this because both the cars involved there look like they're still on top of the hill. Yeah, there they are now. So I fully expect a yellow any time now, and really that's going to bunch the field back up. There it is, full course yellow. So here we see a replay again, and I think the white car here just kind of came into turn 2 a little bit too fast and just couldn't make it to the left before going through turn 2.
Yeah, so one of the things that we could have talked about on the track map as well, we can actually look on the P1TS software here, is the second corner, the run up the hill after turn 1 into turn 2. You're carrying so much speed with that your car naturally wants to track out all the way to the edge of the track, and there's not a lot of curving out there. So, CJ, if you drop off a right rear tire, then you're off in the dirt, and it's just going for a ride.
Yeah, you're definitely going for a ride out in that. And it's so sandy that once you drop that tire off, you have very little control over the car. You're along for the ride. And as Kevin was saying earlier, one of the things is turn 1 up into turn 2, you're wide open, or you're pretty well hauled the mail. There's a lot of undulations through there, and if the car gets an oscillation on it too much, it gets up into the air. A lot of times you'll spin or lose control, end off into the sand, and then just like Kyle found there, Kyle Washington, he's off on a ride, and unfortunately he collected his teammates too. So feel bad for both of them because they both were having really good runs.
So with this caution, this is sort of a little bit like the drama we saw yesterday, except now, Kevin, the caution time has been reversed. It was
I know we were wondering about what happened with Jason Daskalos at the start, and it turns out he was late to the grid and actually had to start at the back. It didn't take him long to carve his way back to the front of the sports club field. And this caution actually is what the team wanted because, believe it or not, they really want to try and mix it up with the newer model GT3 cars. They think they've got the pace to hang with, and we kind of saw that on display yesterday. And so, in speaking to the team, they felt like a yellow would be really nice because they wanted to show their stuff going up against some of the newer cars. I think they've got the wheelman to hang with those guys.
So, Kevin, as we were saying, with that caution out, we had the caution in the last 15 minutes yesterday and a caution in the first 15 minutes today. And we already talked a little bit about how this is going to change things now, but we're going to bunch the field up with our pro drivers now. And with the restart this early in the race, there's still, you still got a lot of brake in the car. You still got pretty fresh tires, which is a big consideration. Yesterday, they were on sort of worn out Pirellis at that point. So, restart, how aggressive they're going to be. You said yesterday they're going to go for it. Same thing today?
Yeah, I think so. Anytime you put all the cars really close together, that's your opportunity to try to pass a car that maybe you were chasing down previously. So now that the caution's out and all these cars are going to be really, really close, I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see the most aggressive driving that we've seen all day.
And so while we got a moment, I see on my talking point thing here that there's a
coverage is brought to you in partnership with.
Oh yes. So during the GT Rivals on my sim, one of the races that we were running, started the race, and unfortunately, I do like to wear racing shoes because the pedals are pretty similar to the ones in the race car. But I didn't have my good normal racing shoes or any of my gear at the house. It was in the race hauler. So I decided I had this old set that previously I had been wearing when my car caught on fire and burned the floorboards and just about everything else, and apparently burned the soles of the shoes as well. And here I am sitting on the doing GT Rivals, made 3 or 4 laps in the race, and next thing I know, the pedals aren't working worth a darn. And apparently the shoes disintegrated out from underneath my feet, and the big chunks of plastic or rubber from the soles had lodged themselves into the mechanisms. So I essentially took a virtual pit stop and then decided, to heck with this, I'm done for today. But yeah, so a little lesson learned there: don't reuse fire-singed racing shoes, especially not on your sim.
Yeah, I think yeah, probably not. And Kevin, I hear that your sim setup at home is self-constructed and a little DIY over there.
That's right. I had some leftover car parts from when I built my first race car, and decided to use some plywood and 2x4s and build a structure around an old seat. And that's what I used in GT Rivals, racing a car almost exactly identical to what we're watching Colin and George drive today.
I think we all have sort of sketchy sim setups. I know mine's on a desk, IKEA desk from like 1970. So it's we all have our own ways to get around not having the best setup in the world. But you perform really well with that setup. And the GT Rivals thing, let's talk about that a little bit, because obviously you guys both competed in that. We've spoken a bit about it. But I think what was so cool about that was bringing together all these drivers from all these different series together and putting them on a common platform. Maybe not on a completely level playing field, because there's a little bit of a setup process involved. But tell me a little bit about racing some of the other guys from some of the different series and what that was like in GT Rivals.
Yeah, for me it was a lot of fun, and exactly like you said, I think you could actually see the age disparity a bit. It was one of those things that a lot of the seasoned race car drivers that might have been a little bit more senior, and I'll include myself in this, seemed to have sim rigs that provided more feel. Where some of the younger racers like Kevin are able to have rigs that don't have full motion and all that stuff, because they're much more attuned to the digital environment and actually are able to take the inputs that they see on the screen, and their body, computes them, or their brain computes them. Where in my case, if I don't have the butt feel, if you will, I don't know that it's time to brake by the numbers that are on the screen. And I think that's one of the things that we saw in some of the seasoned drivers, like actually Colin Brown is one of the drivers that I talked to. He had the same thing. Even though he's a little bit younger, he's been racing cars so long that it really, he said that it kind of messes him up a little bit. Just from that standpoint, it changes kind of the input mechanisms that he usually uses on the track versus what you do in a sim.
Yeah, for me, it was a little bit of a different story, because in GT Rivals, we were driving these GT3 machines, which are quite a bit different from the Honda Civic that I'm racing here in real life today. So there wasn't a lot of similarity to kind of mess me up. So I was starting new, no matter which way you look at it. And then another interesting aspect was that we raced on mostly tracks that we don't have here in the U.S. So it was really interesting to have all the drivers sort of learning the track at the same time. And I think that leveled the playing field just a little bit more as well. And I personally really enjoyed getting to race against some of the guys that we're watching right now live on the track.
So still under our first full course yellow of the day, and once we go back green, we'll get to analyze the data some more. But you see that contact with the teammates down in turn number 2. And the restart here, we're going to get that in just a moment here, CJ. Turn number 2 at Sonoma, you're climbing up a huge elevation change. And elevation is something that we haven't talked a whole lot about. This track has a lot of it, over 120 feet over the course of the lap. Heading up into turn 2, you're slamming on those binders, but the gravity's helping you. So how does that change your aggression in the braking zone, knowing that you have the gravity to lean on going up the hills?
So you're leaning on the gravity both in the braking zone, but also acceleration up the hill, because as you're going up the hill, you're going back. There's a little bit of a lift at the bottom of the hill, but then you're right back on the throttle and carrying it up, bouncing the car off of the pavement in a lot of cases. You get up into 2, And your braking zone, it's not as hard of a braking zone as you might think, coming from a full, basically a straightaway up the hill. And you're able to basically brush the brakes, turn the wheel before you can actually see where you're going, go back to the throttle, rotate the car. Kevin taught me a nice little trick to look at the end of the grandstands that are up there to know where the track runs out and where I'm going to end up needing to be. And you're able to make your way through there. In this case, with these cars, especially on the restart, they're going to go through there pretty much two by two, so 2 wide, or try to at least. And hopefully we don't end up with any more calamity like this.
Yeah, well, and instead of a race at Sonoma Raceway, it's a race back to the paddock area now with 2 Porsches on rollback, so not the place that they wanted to be. While we're under yellow, we can take a look at the P1TS software, and while there's not a whole lot going on in the name of racing right now while we sit awaiting the restart, the caution sequence here, Kevin, again, full course yellow, and let's explain the difference between a local and a full course for those that may not know. Local caution is just there's corner workers, a person at each corner on the racetrack with flags that they can wave. And if there's an issue that might clear itself up, or a car that just spun out, a corner worker can just wave a single yellow flag. However, if we get a dangerous situation like we just saw, they can put a full course yellow, which means that everybody has to slow down, bunch up, and await a restart.
Right. I mean, exactly what we're seeing here. The 2 cars that were kind of disabled on the track, that required some extra equipment to come and remove those cars. So it's not really safe to let the other race cars continue at high speed. So that normally requires a full course caution. But if there was if those cars would have been able to kind of turn around and rejoin the track, then it likely would have just been a very temporary yellow just in that one turn.
So still awaiting the restart here for GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, sponsored by CrowdStrike, the CrowdStrike Mercedes-AMG GT3, driven by Colin Brown and George Kurtz. Second place right now overall, but first in Pro-Am. And what that would mean for them to grab a victory here at Sonoma, CJ. Obviously, every week you're toiling away trying to get victories. We've got Road America coming up in a couple weeks here.
Well, one of the stories coming in was how Racers Edge would bounce back from the disappointment that they experienced yesterday. They were dominating the race before the issue that you guys talked about on the show earlier with the moved pit lane window for those pit stops. They came in too soon, ultimately had to make an extra pit stop, and that really cost them in terms of overall finishing position. And they spent some time trying to figure out how that happened, how that slipped through, and they came to the bottom of that. They've got a plan in place moving forward, and really they were just anxious to turn the page. They were so happy to have a second race this weekend to be able to put that behind them. And they took a great deal of solace in the fact that that car was incredibly fast yesterday, and outside of that big mistake, they had no other miscues. The pit stop was really quick, right on the window that they're looking for there. The car performed well. In fact, the car performed so well, they made 0 changes to the setup. That never happens. They were that happy with that race car. They rolled it back out just the way it was yesterday, and they're off to a pretty good start here, ready to turn the page from the disappointment of race 1 on Saturday.
So with the lights extinguished atop the safety car here, CJ about to get rolling back for the restart with about an hour left, and that leaves us about, 15 minutes or so until we have a driver swap here.
Yes, the safety car procedure here actually will be that cars will come down the straightaway down to the hairpin. The safety car will dodge off there, and then the leader will be able to restart the race single file, so the cars will be lined up nose to tail and take off as they come across the start-finish line down in that area. These cars all, the plan would be for them to all be nose to tail. And I think you're going to see Colin and the drivers that are there all start to get really close to each other once they get down into turn 11, the hairpin.
So if you want to learn more about an upcoming CrowdStrike Virtual Racing League, we're going to have a video to show you a little bit later, so hang tight for that. But we don't want to miss the restart here in just a moment, so stay put for that as well, as we've got 7 make that 5, I think, Pro-Am cars with us, about ready to take the green flag with Colin Brown, the leader. But overall wins as well, Kevin. Obviously, the class win is what you're going for, but to beat Trent Hinman would be, and Shelby Blackstock would be certainly an accomplishment for Colin Brown and George Kurtz.
That's right. It's always a victory in itself to be the fastest car on the track, and I'm sure they'll still be happy with winning the class, but it's just icing on the cake to be able to win overall.
So with the P1TS software, we can see that we're still under full course yellow, but the pace car has pulled off into the pit lane, and that yellow bar about to exchange for a green one, signifying that we've gone back racing. And the 93 of Trent Hinman with co-driver Shelby Blackstock about to jump in that car in just a little bit, going to take us back to the green flag, and we're racing again from Sonoma Raceway, climbing the hill towards turn number 2, the trouble spot a few moments ago with the GT2 Porsches getting together, but Trent Hinman pulls away. Colin Brown now under attack from Jerome Bleekemolen in the metallic blue Porsche behind. There's the number 20 of Max Root, the Wright Motorsports car that was so impressive yesterday, ending up on the podium there, CJ.
Yeah, this car is running in the AM, or both amateur drivers. I think we can easily say that these amateur drivers are at the top of their game, because they're just like yesterday, Max is out there going toe to toe with some of the best pros that are in the industry.
Into turn 5, you see the CrowdStrike Mercedes closing in a little bit on Trent Hinman here, but this Ferrari battle continues with the other DXDT racing car, the 63 of Ryan Dial, Kevin. And on a restart, when everyone's bunched up, this feels like Ryan Dial's opportunity to make something happen here.
That's right. He's this is as close as he's been, and as the two Ferraris start the battle, then he's going to start to try to figure out how to use that to his advantage. So you can see he's trying to get to the inside of the Ferrari, but just can't quite do it there.
Yeah, and the Jeff Seagal in the black Ferrari right in front of the 63 kind of dove into turn 7A to try to gain some ground, but it hurt the exit just a little bit. That's going to put Dial right on the tailpipes as they come over the crest in 8A, now into the braking zone for turn 9. 1 hour left on the clock. Up the road, you see Hinman and Brown separated by just a couple tenths of a second, slamming over the curbs on the rest of the field, and that 63 car looking pretty hungry right now on the back of that 24. And right ahead, there's the Max Root machine in 4th place. So there's lots of positions to be had for the 63 if you can just make it by that group. There is one of the GT2 cars. That's Daskalos in the 27. That's the Daskalos Motorsports entry. And running in 8th place overall, first for the GT2 cars. Gates and Vallon behind as they climb the hill again, the lap after the restart. So now that we've got some green flag racing happening, we can go back to the gap chart here, and this is going to be really interesting to look at on the P1TS software, because we can see the caution period now, where all the cars close back up, but they're going to spread back out again very quickly. And again, we're using the 04 Colin Brown as the reference, and very quickly establishing a 2-second gap in that opening lap after the yellow flag goes down.
Yeah, that's right. When the track goes back green after yellow, it's really important to kind of get up to speed as quickly as possible, and what we're seeing here is Colin did a great job of that and building a lead over all the other cars in his class.
And again, the number 1 car, that's the Ferrari that has this the other Ferrari in behind it, and the 63, the other DXDT racing car in behind, still kind of a rolling roadblock there for the 63 machine. There is the 2nd place car, that's Jerome Bleekemolen, right in front of Max Root. There are 3rd and 4th overall as they head through the S's, and there again is this trio of the Italians versus the Germans as they come over the top of 8A down into the braking zone for 9. And that Mercedes sounds so good too, that thundering V8 engine in there. CJ, tell me a little bit about that motor.
Yeah, the sound of that car is second to none, and it does have that deep, throaty growl, like it's just saying, "Get out of my way." It's essentially the same 6.3 liter V8 that you would get in a lot of various different Mercedes, at least over the last few years. Mercedes is slowly but surely seems to be phasing that motor out in favor of a twin turbo 4-liter motor. And actually, if you go out and buy a GT on the street, that's what you'll get, is a 4-liter twin turbo. But in this class, they actually are running the naturally aspirated or no turbo version of the motor for reliability, as well as because actually they actually put restrictors on this car to slow it down. So to have turbos and all that stuff on it and then slow it down yet again, it didn't make a lot of sense. So they, for reliability, have gone with the naturally aspirated version.
Well, we were talking about sim racing stuff earlier, and again, if you would like to get an experience driving this car, well, you can in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And of course, CrowdStrike has some really interesting upcoming things happening with Assetto Corsa Competizione, and we'll show you that here in just a moment. Climbing back over the crest in turn 3A is the Jerome Bleekemold machine. Third place overall right now, second in class here, CJ. But as we continue to watch this race play out, we go to the P1TS software and see some of the lap times that are running. And Colin Brown continues to run much quicker laps than Jerome Bleekemold. Last time by was about 0.3 quicker and about 2.5 seconds back from Trent Hinman in the 93.
Yeah, Colin definitely has a lot of pace. In practice, we saw that. I think George and Colin were P1 in both of the practices. So with clear track and good tires, he definitely can lay down some serious laps. I think you'll actually see George is able to, when he gets in the car, be able to do some really good laps as well. The way that they actually set it up is the tires that they qualify on, they actually have to run during these races. So that's always an interesting thing. So yesterday, what you saw is maybe a little bit slower lap times from both Colin and George because they were actually running on tires that have been used in their qualifying session. Today being the second race, they're actually out there on fresh rubber in both cases.
And CJ, also, well, we've got these drivers running out here. We'll talk a little bit more about AWS and the integration here. This software, the P1TS software that Ken Lynn's created, is running on the AWS cloud. And this is basically real time. I'm watching these cars out the window here. There is so little latency. It's amazing how they managed to get all this data to us live so we can watch this and analyze this in real time. It's a pretty amazing thing, technologically at least.
Yeah, absolutely, and part of that is based upon a lot of people think of the cloud. There's one big data center out there, and maybe literally in the cloud, but no, actually AWS has a bunch of regions, and each of these physical geographies we actually have data centers, and you can place those physical servers closest to your environment. In this case, we actually have a region of data centers that's right here, not too far from here. So the one thing we haven't figured out is speed of light. We haven't been able to speed that up, but by having close proximity for all of those servers, by having the region nearby, Ken is able to provide this in near real time, or as close enough for us humans, the milliseconds that it's actually able to do it. So it's a great thing that Ken has done using AWS. This is exactly what we want. We want to see people innovate using the building blocks that AWS provides through those 195 plus services that we have.
And we were discussing yesterday, I think it was you, CJ, that said you'd like to have this in your car. Well, I was told that there is a customer that runs a tablet in their GT3 car's steering wheel that runs P1TS, so he can review everyone's lap times, which I think was really interesting. That's what Ken told me yesterday. I think that's a really interesting application of itself.
Yeah, I think Kevin was the one who asked for that, because I'm sure I would wreck my car, because I probably would be taking emails and other things on that, as well as looking at the data that was on there. But that's especially your smaller teams, or if you don't have a crew chief on the radio that can convey that type of information to you or give you the information that you can get. It's perfect for that kind of stuff. You're able to during the full course yellows be able to get a good download of the data. And if you watch F1, when the drivers come back in and they're still in the car during the different qualifying sessions, P1, 2, and 3, you actually, or they're in the different qualifying sessions, I should say. You actually see they put the screens on their dashboards or on the dash so that they can actually read and get caught up and see the overlay so that they know where they can go faster.
And Kevin, we're going to take another look at the gap chart, here, and we can see the 14 still dropping about 4 to 5 seconds behind Colin Brown, that blue line towards the top of the screen. But the orange, red, and white continue to drop down here. So again, the desperation and the frustration starts to climb here for the 63, the XPT Racing Mercedes.
That's right. I'm sure Ryan is very frustrated to not be able to get by both these Ferraris at this point, but it's really a struggle at a track like this that's got so many turns. There's not a lot of straightaways, and it's just a low grip track that's really hard to pass at. So in the end, I'm sure they're going to be looking at their strategy and sizing up whether the co-drivers will be faster than the competitors' co-drivers, and that may change some of their pit strategy.
And what about the tire wear at this point in the race? And the Mercedes, obviously, it seems like yesterday it was really good in some of the higher speed corners, but was struggling in the low end stuff. How do you think the tire wear is going to be different between the Ferrari and the Mercedes platforms?
Well, the yellow really is going to kind of shake that up a little bit, because they spent over 5 laps kind of cruising around pretty slow, so that's going to extend the tire life quite a bit. So I think yesterday we saw the Mercedes had a little bit harder time late in the stint with its tires, so this may make it a little bit easier for them to still be pushing
They
hard
are,
at the end
and
of the
James
stint.
has his fingers in a lot of different elements of this team. Of course, he's the co-driver for Jerome Bleekemolen, but he's also the team owner, and if you'll recall, the two cars involved in our full course yellow, those were both GMG racing cars. So James just arrived back here in the pit lane after spending some time back in the paddock, working with his clients, making sure everything was okay, and apparently one of them had to remind him, hey, aren't you driving? Don't you need to be back out there? Your pit stop should be coming up soon. So sure enough, he ended up here on his scooter. He's going to be hopping in the car here pretty soon, but clearly he's got a lot on his mind, running 8 cars here this weekend under the GMG tent, plus driving duties. That's a lot to keep track of.
Thanks, Ryan. And it is with 50 minutes left. We're approaching the pit stop window here, CJ. So now the strategy starts. When are you going to bring your driver down pit lane? You said earlier you might want to leave the Pro out there for a few more laps. But if you're the 63, I don't know, maybe you're going to mix it up a little bit. Well, we're going to see what happens here in a moment.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the kind of thing you might actually, going back to the data, if the data says that Ryan's being held up enough by the cars that are in front of him that jumping, basically pitting really early, getting David Askew in the car and letting David out using the P1TS software to see if they can get him out in clean air, where he can go out and run qualifying laps essentially. That may be the call to do. I think by looking at this, the regular play or the regular pitch strategy here for many of these teams would be to delay to do the pit stop later, just because in the Pro-Am case, for all the Pro-Am cars, keeping the pros in the car are normally about a delta of about a second to almost 2, depending on the difference between the drivers. I think you'll find that Colin and George are, about, Colin's about a second and change faster than George, which is a pretty good. I mean, George is really good. He's honed his skill over the many years that he and Colin have been working together, and they've really got the car dialed in and the drivers dialed in. So there's not as much of a delta between them. So you may see some strategy play by them, as well as, like you said, the 63 car is being held up. See, their times are 40.7 best lap. So you're looking at I think my choice would be I'd still keep him out there. Ryan's still hauling him out because he's out there. He's being held up by other pros. So.
And of course, if anyone has any questions for either CJ or Kevin, you can leave those in the YouTube chat, or you can tweet #CrowdStrike Racing. So as we continue the race here, we are about 48 minutes away from the completion of the second and final race of the weekend, and for the GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, sponsored by CrowdStrike. The climb up the hill into turn 2, and there is that Ferrari GT3 and Mercedes AMG battle as they head through turn 2. We can also see that the GT2 cars, which we mentioned the multi-class format earlier, Kevin, those cars run for 40 minutes and then their race is up and over. You can see that they got the checkered flag next to their number. They are done for the day and they're out of this race.
That's right, and that's going to put a little bit fewer cars on track, which may make it a little bit easier for some of the GT3 cars out there, because it's kind of less traffic for them to have to deal with. So I'm sure as we go through the driver changes, that may make it easier on them a little bit later.
Tracking out of the carousel and down the back straightaway again. And we talked about a couple of different layouts. Have we ever seen them use the drag strip all the way down to the hairpin? I thought that was a layout that existed at one point, whether it was fictional or not. But they have a bunch of different options here. And there's basically the drag strip runs all the way straight, but this course kind of bears off to the left towards the hairpin.
Yeah, I've never seen them actually use it, but it is, if I remember correctly, in iRacing, that is one of the configurations that it offers. It just doesn't happen to offer this configuration. That was the one that I was looking for when I went in.
Yeah, well, hopefully we can get it in Assetto Corsa Competizione and really get the accurate version up to date and everything, which would be awesome. As we head down into the hairpin again, you can see the battle for third place overall right ahead of them. That was, of course, Jerome Bleekemolen and Maxwell Root in the number 20. And again, the pit window about to open here in just a few minutes, and we'll start to see drivers hit the pit lane. And going back to the P1TS software, this is a really good opportunity to look at where the 04 Combron might come out, given a 73-second or so pit delta. We go back to P1TS. You can see that ghosted line around the green track map. Where it ends, which is on the bottom right of your screen near the cursor, that is approximately where the 04 would come out of the pits, which is well away from any traffic here, Kevin. So that seems like where he is right now is a pretty good place to go into pit lane and not have any distractions coming back out.
That's right. I mean, since the yellow bunched all the cars up, all the cars are kind of in one cluster around the whole track right now. So, of course, if they pitted, they would lose all the track position and they would be behind all the other cars, but they would at least be by themselves and make it a little easier to kind of put your head down and hit all the marks and go fast.
We saw Maxwell Root exploring a little bit of track limits around this place, kicking up some dust. There was a full course caution yesterday for actually some dust in turn 9A. Tell me a little bit about, obviously the curbing here at Sonoma is pretty rough in some places, but getting a little bit extra on track out, knocking up some dirt, is that just part of the racing line here?
It can be. I mean, if you do it in the wrong way, it's really slippery and you can slide the car completely off the track. But if maybe you're only putting half the tire into the dirt, then you're able to kind of open up the steering and maybe get to full throttle just a little bit earlier. So it really depends on which section of the track you're at and how precise you can be with the car.
And tracking all the way at the exit at turn number 10. 20 seconds until the halfway point here in this race, and out up front in the overall lead is, of course, Trent Himmin and the number 93 Racer's Edge Acura NSX GT3 with Colin Brown 6 seconds back. Jerome Bleekemolen about 12 back from that. Another little bit back to Max Root. So as we head up the hill through turn number 1, 45 minutes across the board, complete, and 45 left to go. And with the pit window now open, let's talk a little bit about that. We've got Himmin out front. And now he's sort of in a class of his own here, but you're still going for the overall win. Again, you're going to probably see this extended all the way to the end of the pit window, you think?
Yeah, well, that's the thing with their particular class. I don't know who's faster, if Trent's faster, or if what's it, Baptista?
Shelby Blackstock.
Shelby Blackstock. Yeah, I don't know if Shelby or Trent is the faster driver. They're probably pretty close to each other. So they now have the option, if you have two drivers that are roughly the same speed, to choose what's best for you. And likely using P1TS, they'll be able to choose when they want to do it. Once again, trying to come back out into open air, just like they have right now, in order to be able to go and continue to run qualifying laps, not have to work through traffic.
And this is one of these things I always find super interesting, is looking at all the individual sectors. This is lap 14 through 24. We can look at all of them if we wanted to. And I think we're going to do just that. So this is an entire list here, Kevin, of all the sectors that Colin Brown has done so far. And this is very detailed data. And for the engineers and drivers that could find this useful, there's a lot here. This might just look like a huge bank of numbers, and it is, but there's a way to read this, I think.
That's right. I mean, essentially, just looking at the lap time itself, you can see that Colin's kind of slowed down about a second and a half from his fastest lap at this point. And some of that's from the tires, and then if we look at some of the columns on the right with the 30, 33, and 34 seconds there, you can actually look a little bit more detail and maybe find where some of that time is being lost. Maybe if it's in the first third or the second or third of the track.
And the 63 DXDT racing car right now continues to be sort of trapped behind these Ferraris through turn 3 and 3A up over the crest. That's a fun corner there. We were talking about elevation a little bit earlier, CJ. The crest over 3A and coming over the top of that hill. I was out there this morning fixing some of those A-frames that had fallen over, but even in the SUV we were in, the car gets light up over the top of that.
Absolutely. I know when I was out there, you go up over that, once again, another blind right-hand turn where you have to go to the throttle before you actually get there. Once again, using the grandstands as a good indication of what because that's the big tall thing behind the hill that you can actually still see when you're coming up it. Car gets really light. In my case, a front-wheel drive car, you get light off of that. My back tires were actually skating sideways across that, almost dancing, in order to stay on the track. And if you hit it just right, you'll run out of track right when you don't need any more track, and you stay right alongside that outside edge and bring it back and go into 4A or into 4.
And Kevin, it seems like that's another thing that the sim, again, could train you for, is how to look for certain places. When you come up over the crest in turn 3A, you're aiming for, the track falls away. You can't see the racetrack, so you have to aim for a different marker. And I think that's the value of sim racing, maybe, is that you can sort of figure out where those markers are before you get to the track and drastically reduce that learning curve when you first take laps.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea to try, but in the end, you're putting a lot of trust in some programmers if you do that completely blind. So you definitely have to take that with a grain of salt and kind of come to the track with an open mind and eyes wide open as well. But definitely sim racing can give you a good idea and maybe some clues for what you should be looking to, but once you get to the track, you still have to make sure that what you see is really there.
Yeah, well, and that's it. The other thing is, of course, if there's specific event based signage or something. If you're going, oh well, there's a CrowdStrike sign there, but then it's moved 10 feet the next day. You can't use things that move as a marker there, CJ.
Definitely not. Like you said, you were out there helping to reset up the A-frames.
Yeah, we're messing up your braking points.
Yeah, you're using those braking points. It's a bad thing. You do have to pick something that's going to be there, or you think is going to be there. I mean, you do have in some cases braking markers that are affixed and should stay in place, but not always do they. Yeah, you can see the tires are starting to go away on these cars, and that's why the pit window time frames are roughly 45 minutes or so. So we could see Trent there working his way down through 9 and 9A. Colin not too far off of his backside. Looks about 6-second gap at this point in time. Yeah, we should see. Let's see if Colin goes. No, he's going to keep going. That's like I thought. The pit window is going to be, for the Pro-Am's going to be on the later side of the pit window, leaving the pros in there to continue to lay down those laps.
All right, we're looking right now at the gap between Trent Hinman and Colin Brown, and well, we got some nice fancy graphics on the TV to show us that. We can also show it to you in P1TS, and of course we zoom out just a little bit, and we can. Well, I think I'm missing a class here. That might be what's hurting me, but we go back. At least we can compare the drivers that are behind Colin Brown, and we can continue to see that the gaps have been pretty constant here, Kevin, as the 04 continues to pull away from the drivers behind. And I think that's the value of this, as we can see that no one's chasing him down. He might be losing a little bit of ground to Hinman, but he is not getting run down by anybody from behind.
That's right. I mean, these lines indicate that Colin's pulling away from the cars behind him by fractions of a second a lap every single lap. So it looks like the gap to the next car behind is about 7.5 seconds, and over 15 seconds to kind of third, fourth, and fifth that are really close together.
And so pit road speed here, about 50K down on the pit lane, and it seems like forever, CJ, when you're on that pit lane. You've been averaging, well into the 80s and 90 mile an hour range around this place. Then you come and hit 50 kilometers on pit lane. That's got to feel like you're driving through a school zone.
Yeah, absolutely. So on this track, we're looking at the data in GT3. You're ranging from 40 miles an hour up to 140 roughly in the case of these cars, and 50 kilometers an hour when you get down in there does feel like you're walking. Luckily, we do have mechanisms in the car. Literally, you get down, you get the car into second gear, you press a button on the dash and mash the throttle to the floor, and it'll actually keep you, provided you set it properly, keep you under the pit road speed limit of 50K. And normally you'll have it set at like 49.9 or something really close. Therefore, you're not wasting any time on pit lane, but it still feels like you could read a book while you're working your way down pit lane.
We actually saw some pit road speeding penalties yesterday in the GT4 races, Kevin. So tell me a little about that. Is that more just drivers not getting to the button quick enough or disabling it too soon?
Well, the pit entrance at this track is really unique because it's you kind of enter pit lane from a high-speed straightaway, and then you kind of have to go around the entire last turn before you feel like you're in pit lane. So sometimes it's tempting to kind of carry too much speed into pit lane before you actually need to slow down.
And continuing to watch this battle with the Ferraris and the 63 DXDT Racing Mercedes, chasing them down through turn 4 and into 5. And this has been a pretty intense battle since the drop of the green flag. We're now about 53 minutes into this race here, CJ, and it still has not ended yet. These drivers they're amped up right now, but they're about to relinquish the car to their teammate, and then you put all that trust in your co-driver, which is a whole other fiasco to deal with once you hand the car over.
Well, absolutely, and actually what you're going to see here is not even the co-drivers as much as you're going to see the pit stops themselves. The teams are going to do the pit stops. Obviously, the other driver will be getting in the car, and those three cars that were so close together, let's remember that here after the pit stops and see where they end up. and then you'll be able to tell where they actually how they're doing it. And now you have Trent pulled in for his pit stop, and Colin's still going for another.
So this is a crucial moment in this race here, because with Colin Brown staying out an additional lap, again, we're trading to the AM driver. This might give the CrowdStrike Mercedes an advantage over the 93 car. And we'll see how much that actually translates to. We know Shelby's a pretty solid racing driver as well, but this extra lap could be the difference between making up ground and losing it.
Absolutely. What we see here from their perspective is they're going for the overcut, where it appears that Shelby and Trent are trying to do the undercut. And I tend to think that it's going to be a good race between George and Shelby. But at the same time, I think the bigger race is going to be here.
I'll tell you what, pit lane is a busy place. Driver change underway. James Safron is climbing into the number 14 machine. They were a little bit slow on that driver change yesterday, and that was a bit costly for them. Looking to clean that up. A little bit further behind this car, like you mentioned, it is the Squadra Corsa Ferrari, which picked up the 300th win globally for the 488 GT3 yesterday. And they're hoping to get that thing dialed in after problems with tire pressure, we believe, for Rodrigo Baptista on that opening stint. Driver change still taking place here with G&G, James Safronis. Tires are done before the driver, and they're going to get beat out by that Ferrari. Big pit stop from the Squadra Corsa guys.
And we just noticed that the 63 DXTT Racing Mercedes also stayed out on the racetrack here, guys. So that means that both the DXTT Racing cars stayed out an extra lap. They're going to try to do the overcut here, CJ, which means that they might be able to jump, or at least the 63 could jump those Ferraris who was following for the entire race.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can see actually the 04 cars now come in, but what they've done is they've actually stayed out there an extra lap so that Colin could go out there and try to run a very fast lap so that when he comes in, the cars that were in the pit lane, he'll now put George back out there in front of those other cars. Same thing with Ryan Dial. He's hoping to now those other cars that come in do a faster lap than they could have done, and then you see Ryan coming in now. So we'll get to see how this plays out. If it plays out the way that DXDT is planned, Ryan's co-driver, David Askew, will actually come out ahead of those other two cars they were chasing.
So we can see the 93 on the bottom right-hand corner of the track map here. And now this is the crucial moment. Will that 93 come out in front of the 04, which will now be driven by George Kurtz. So Shelby Blackstock has jumped in the Racer's Edge Acura NSX GT3. And now it's a racing game to the end of the pit road here. And this is where the pit crews really come in handy, but there's still that minimum stop time that everyone's shooting for here.
Yeah, you have to make sure that you don't go under on that pit stop time, because as we saw yesterday, similar types of penalties can be given. And there you see the 04 car going.
And yeah, the 93 is still all the way back in the hairpin. So this is where that pit lane is going to be so long.
Yeah, it's going to be so long, and George will make sure that he doesn't come in under that time. So the other thing we have to remember is that George is really not racing that car that's in front of him. He's racing the, Bleakmolin was the one that was right behind him. So James Safronis and George Kurtz are going to be going head-to-head here at some point.
So Kevin, we just saw the pit lane exit for the 04, and you just see that car go by. And yes, it's in a different category, and you're not directly racing it, but the race car driver still wants to go get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's tempting to do that, but you also have to kind of be realistic and think about the long game as well, because a lot of these cars that are on the screen now are the ones that you're actually racing. So it seems like they have a pretty good gap to those cars right now. So I think probably it's good to sort of try to maintain that gap and make sure at the minimum you can win the class.
So we also just saw the 63 now driven by Askew come out of the pit lane, and I believe if we have a look here at our P1TS software, you can see the time that Askew spent on pit lane, 127.896 in comparison to some other times around here, 127.367, but a 136.336 for one of the Porsches, a 143.342 for the number 24 Ferrari.
Actually, if you look at the Fuentes one, the one that I want to point out is a 126.53, and I'm not 100% sure, but I don't believe that is actually a valid. I think they might be getting a pit road pit road time penalty.
Oh, too short. So the minimum time's a 127 or something like that, or that would make a little bit of sense. So we'll see if that ends up being a factor here. But just over 30 minutes to go here so far, Kevin. We've seen some good racing, some strategy play out, but with a little bit left in the race here, Kevin, or excuse me, CJ, what's the plan here?
Just one real quick thing on that. We were just talking about the pit road times and stuff like that. One of the things in GT3 that they actually have is they actually have a joker. And what that is that anything, so if you actually, during your pit speed time, if during the weekend you have the opportunity to actually be under time by up to just under a second. So if it's a point anything that they actually are too fast in their pit road time, they actually get to use their joker, and that means they're home free. But you can only use it once during the weekend, so that may be what that one team has been able to do is use the joker. So we'll see. I'm sure we'll hear from race control.
So a get out of jail free card there for that team, Kevin. But it's been a pretty wild race so far. We've seen some strategy play out with the final 30 minutes. Now you've got your AM driver in. What's the plan for those guys? I mean, you're trying to build on the lead that the other drivers got in these battles, but the 63 of Askew, he's just jumped in his car and he's leapfrogged one of those Ferraris, but still some work to do.
Yeah, it looks like he's not as close to. He leapfrogged one of the Ferraris, but he's not as close to the other one. So he's still gonna kind of put his head down and try to catch back up and try to make a pass. But in the end, you still have to kind of keep in mind you can't push too hard in the beginning because there's still over 30 minutes left in the race.
And there's that pit time of 1:27.806 for the Racer's Edge Acura NSX GT3, now driven by Shelby Blackstock. And their lead, again, over the 04 of George Kurtz is about 8.7 seconds. But George Kurtz still leading in the Pro-Am category here, CJ. So they're looking right now to be on the top step of the podium if things continue as they are. We also noticed that Fordad is now third overall in the number 20. That's the GT3 AM car, who jumped a spot in overall position here on the pit stop.
Yeah, this right now, quite honestly, it looks really good for George and Colin if George is able to put his head down and we don't have any of those full course cautions and all of these various different reasons.
Looks like a drive-through penalty for a pit lane speed violation for the CrowdStrike Mercedes, the 04 car. That is going to be a huge deal. Although while that graphic came up, we were looking at the 93. So I'm not sure if that it should be the 04, but again, I don't know if that was just a graphic mistake. I hope it's not the 04 that got the penalty, but it looks like it will be. And then we talked about this, getting on the button too late or putting it on too soon can get you a pit road speeding penalty even with that 8 on the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely.
There it is again. So looks like Colin Brown and George Kurtz will have to serve that penalty on pit lane, which will be just a drive-through today. Won't be a stop and hold like it was for the 93, but I don't know if that advantage is going to be quite enough to sustain a drive-through.
No, that's a pretty hefty penalty. Takes him out of competition for the win, unless we get a full course caution or something of that nature late, like we did yesterday. So that's where in racing, the race isn't over till the checker flag flies. So they'll take their penalty. They'll come in and get back out there and go as hard as they can, with the hopes that they'll get a full course caution and be able to erase that delta. But that does hurt them.
So we're going to see the 04 by George Kurtz driving that car in pit lane here shortly, and he's going to take it right now. And now we're going to get to see on the P1TS software as he enters pit lane where he's going to pop out again 50 kilometers an hour on this pit lane, and it's going to feel like it's going to take forever in behind the 1, the 14, the 63, all chasing that car for class position. So we'll see where the 04 pops out here, Kevin, but this is disastrous in going for a class victory in Pro-Am.
That's right. I mean, they both Colin and George have put a lot of work in to get into the position they were in right now. So I think the main reason why they came into pit lane now is to kind of get this over with and then still have as much time left in the race so that they can salvage as much track position as they can.
So with less than a half an hour to go, it all unravels for the CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes. But that's just how racing is sometimes. And sometimes you get lucky, and sometimes you have days like this where everything was going right, and if one little thing goes wrong, and it just throws it all out of kilter. But, I mean, at least they'll get the chance to go back out there and make up some of that time.
For the second day in a row, it's Jason Daskalos picking up the win overall in GT Sports Club and doing it in one of the older generation Audi GT3 machines. That car is packed with a ton of downforce. How much fun is this racetrack in a car like that?
The Guzman Solutions R8 Ultra ran great today. It's a lot of downforce. It suits this track really well. The car's new to us, so we've done a little bit of testing and still trying to get it right. Sheldon Miller and Mark Barton, they did a great job setting up the car.
It's great to have you back at the championship. Congratulations on a great weekend, and we hope to see you in future races as well.
Great, thank you. Glad to be here.
And heading back down to the racetrack, we're going to catch up here on our P1TS software, and we can take a look at how much this cost the 04. Was leading in the class, now 4th, and that extra drive down the pit lane, 46 seconds was ended up being that time penalty, TJ, which is a pretty enormous place to drop down. So still some time left in the race to make up some of this, but not what day they wanted here.
Yeah, and as Kevin said, the reason why they took the pit stop they came down the penalty as quickly as they could because the full course caution were to come out now, that 46 seconds, and that pretty much is dissolved except for, being able to get out in front of the other cars. But it's one of those things that's why we race. And if you look back to VIR, the pit stop that the team pulled off was actually, 0.2 of a second to the good, so very, very close to the minimum speed time. And I think they were, looking to try to keep within that delta again this time. I didn't see exactly what time they had, but obviously it was a little bit too close.
You can see again on the P1TS software here on the AWS cloud, the extra pit stop bubble. Each one of these, those little dots represents a pit stop, or at least a run down pit lane here, Kevin. So we can see that second stop was where all that time was lost. And while this is not a great situation, this is still a really cool example of how this software works and how it can show you how much time you gain or lose on a pit stop like that.
That's right, and you can see how basically all the cars jumped ahead right now. So definitely George has a lot of work to do to try to recover some of that, but we'll see how much damage he can do.
So 25 minutes to go. Shelby Blackstock leads overall, and now it's Portad leading the GT3 Pro-Am, or excuse me, that's the GT3 Am class. Fuentes in the number 1 leads GT3 Pro-Am now with James Fronis in behind. Then Askew in the 63, and they were able to leapfrog one of those Ferraris during that pit stop sequence, CJ, but now you got to just outrace the other one.
Yeah, can't get them all on pit lane, so now you got to put your head down and go. I think the race that we'll see here from James Safranis trying to chase down Fuentes here will be a good one as well, just from the standpoint that this is essentially James's home track. And they performed very well here yesterday. So I think we'll see a good fight there. And at the same time, once again, now we're going to have George and David Askew that will be, pretty close to each other here shortly. And we'll actually be able to see the team cars go at each other.
Well, a great three-way battle for second overall here as they head through turns 4 and 5. See the CrowdStrike signs on the side. And again, this has been a really cool weekend for me here, guys. So kind of using, of course, CrowdStrike and AWS working together, and also using the P1TS software to utilize the AWS cloud to bring us all this data in real time. But now, for the driver, the data sort of goes away, and now you're just focused on racing each other here, Kevin.
That's right. I mean, especially when you have cars this close, it's all about trying to find a little weakness on the car ahead of you so that you can take advantage of it and get by. Especially when you have a close group of cars, more than 2 cars. Maybe if you're the car in the middle, you not only have to be on the attack, you also have to be on defense because of the car behind you.
And the Ferrari slicing and dicing amongst the Porsches now. Jerome Bleekemolen relinquished that car to James Safronis in the 14. That's the metallic blue and orange car tucked in behind the number 1 Ferrari. That's Fuentes, who is the GT3 Pro-Am class leader. So with Safronis putting some pressure on your CJ, it's about to get really racy behind Portad here.
Absolutely, and that's the interesting part when you have this multi-class racing. Essentially, the 2 cars that are behind Portad are racing for the Pro-Am win. And at the same time, I'm sure Fuentes wants to get by Portad so that he'll actually have a blocker behind him, unwitting participant in a blocking that would be, in the form of Portad in another class. So we're gonna see some fireworks here. Like I said, this is James' home track, and he'd like to do nothing more than to win here.
And we see now that George Kurtz in the 04 CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes-AMG GT3 chasing Gandor in the 24 in front of him. And Kevin, now that you've had that penalty, you got a little bit of a fire lit up under you now, and now you're really ready to go and grab some of those spots back.
Right, it's probably pretty good for George to see the Ferrari in front of him, so he kind of knows that he's still got a chance to make up some position. So I'm sure that he's kind of focusing on hitting his marks and driving his race, but at the same time using the Ferrari as motivation to try to get aggressive and make some passes.
So with 22 minutes remaining in the race, we can go back to the P1TS software and continue to look at some lap times here as see George Kurtz in the DXCT racing car sweep down through the carousel. Take a look at lap times. Bordad last time by was a 1:43.205, which is definitely off pace in comparison to the GT3 Pro-Am cars behind him here, Kevin. So with those that slower time by the second place overall car, that's going to bunch up the third place overall battle and for the race win in GT3 Pro-Am.
That's right. Basically, the Bordad is kind of a little bit slower than them, so that's going to kind of keep Fuentes and Sofronis really close together and maybe even allow for David Askew to catch up.
And again, the 63 car, the other DXCT racing machine, now third place in GT3 Pro-Am. There is the 24 of Gandor, who had an extensive battle the other day with George Kurtz in the 04, but again, now for fourth place in class as they sweep down through the hairpin in turn number 11. And CJ, this corner, again, the hairpin, this is so much about kind of arcing it in and getting a late apex to just get a straight run off the corner.
Yeah, any turn that's leading onto a straightaway, you want to be able to get rotated and get back to the throttle as soon as you can. And down there in turn 11, that's key. But you have to, there's a couple ways to do it. Arcing it around there, being able to get the car pointed and get back to the throttle so that you can get out of there. You can see, leading up to this point, the Ferrari was actually a little bit quicker. And on the backside of the track, going through turns 5 and 6. Whoa, that's a nice dive there.
Yeah, that was a big dive up the outside. Yep,
here James was going to try to dive in underneath him because obviously the Ferrari made a little bit of a mistake there. And like I said, there's going to be some fireworks here before this one's over.
Yeah, and trying to put down the power on quarter exit Fuentes. Kevin, really lighten up those rear tires. You have traction control to lean on in this series, but you might turn that down a little bit, just trying to get that drive up off. But slipping your rear tires isn't necessarily a great thing because you're going to lose that drive.
That's right. It's tempting to just turn it off and try to smoke the tires to get some extra acceleration, but that'll be pretty temporary. So I'm sure after a big move like that, the Ferrari wants to get back by as he's really being aggressive into the last turn there, but just not enough room with the bundles of tires on the inside.
Yeah, and the last thing you want to do is have contact and get yourself in trouble with the stewards. So, you want to do this as fairly as possible. Then that's got James Sofronis tucked up right under the rear wing of that Ferrari for the lead in GT3 Pro-Am. The climb up the hill, Sofronis to look to the driver's left, and now up the hill into 2, tucked in behind. And the pressure that was on the second place overall car is now on the race leader in GT3 Pro-Am.
That's right, and Sofronis really wants to get by the Ferrari as fast as he can so that he can potentially keep up with the other Porsche. So it's definitely a big battle going on here.
Through turn 4 and then into the infield section of Sonoma Raceway. And again, we saw that Ferrari really aggressive into turn number 7. That's the hairpin over there, CJ. And where is the Ferrari stronger than the Porsche?
Well, it looks like the Ferrari is definitely stronger in the straightaways. He's able to pull away in the straightaways. So I think he also, back in that tight section back there, you can see that the Ferrari is using the draft off the Porsche as well in order to go through here. We got it again. Looks like James is really good under the braking there in the 14 GMG Porsche. So I think James in the Porsche in the rear is actually better on braking and through the twisties. And you get into the straightaway, and it seems like the Ferrari pulls out a little bit on him. That's why, as we come down here into turn 9, under braking, he closes back up. I think you'll see a little bit of a gap as they get down into 11, and then try to dive bomb on the inside again.
So for now, the battle has sort of fizzled, but we know it can pick up at any moment with one late dive on the brakes. And we talked about ABS a little bit yesterday, Kevin, but you're going to be leaning on that as much as possible. Tell me a little bit about, obviously, driving race cars with ABS versus without, and how much of a challenge it is to really have the confidence to get on those brakes and dive in up underneath the 20 car like we saw Fuentes try last lap.
Well, I mean, it's really tricky, especially at a track like Sonoma. That's really a low grip track, especially with the track temp as high as it is today. So sometimes it's really tempting to just completely stand on the pedal and just push on it as hard as you can. But at the same time, you might need to kind of lay off of it a little bit so that you're in control a little more than the ABS.
And so in just a moment, we're going to show you a little bit about how that 04, again, we saw the issues earlier with the penalty, but now it seems like George Kurtz is right tucked in behind the 24 car. You can see these lines absolutely converging pretty much to a minimum here. And this just goes to show you how tightly they're running together, only separated by maybe a couple tenths of a second. Look how close those lines are. They're right on top of each other, but we're continuing to watch the battle for second overall here. And with 17 minutes to go, the pressure is on now for Fuentes to get by this car. Again, not for position in class, but again, for overall. And he's got a car behind him pressuring as well, CJ. So with a car that's out of class in front of you and a car in class behind you, that's going to make you do some pretty aggressive things to try to hold on to that spot.
Yeah, you definitely want to be able to hold on to the spots that you have. And you really want to get in front of the car that's in front of you, because then that puts a car between you and your nearest competitor, which in this case is James Safronis. So yeah, this is one of those situations like Kevin was talking about earlier, where you're kind of you're in the center of the sandwich, and you don't want to do anything that's going to lose you the position from behind. So you have to run a somewhat defensive line, while at the same time you have to be on attack. Because otherwise, you're going to be in this situation for the rest of the race. And I don't doubt that will be the case at some point in time here, as we get down to the end. If James hasn't been able to make his way around, you'll see him pull the tires off and then make a nice charge at it. He did so last year here at Sonoma, so I'm looking forward to seeing it happen again.
Hey, Kevin, I think there's some tracks in cars like this where you might want to be second coming to the end of the race, because you can use that slipstream to get on by. But in a track like this, is it better to be out front and have that track position and be in a different defensive strategy, or would you rather be the attacker and have someone to chase?
I think, especially at Sonoma, it's one of the few tracks where you definitely want to be out front for the whole race, because it's so hard to pass around this track. There's not a very obvious advantage that any car has over another one that you can use to just complete a pass. So if you can just stay out in front, you can actually be a little bit slower, but kind of make the car a little wide, and it'll make it really hard for the cars behind to get by.
We've seen that all day long with P1TS software on the gap chart, showing how the slower car, even though it might be slower, can't get past. And I think that's a position of strength for Fuentes right now. With 15 minutes to go, Shelby Blackstock continues to lead in the Racer's Edge Acura NSX. They were the recipient of a penalty yesterday, CJ, so this would be a great rebound for them after getting pulled out of the lead yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of those situations where this could be redemption for them. After yesterday, I'm sure that it's bugged them all night long. That split second difference has cost them the win yesterday, or the overall win. And here they are today, going out and basically saying, we're not going to make that same mistake, and we're going to drive this one home and take the overall win in that process.
And they've got a pretty sizable lead right now, so your focus goes away from drivers in the mirror, and it's all out front here, Kevin. So with 14 minutes to go, Shelby Blackstock's mission is just to get the car home without doing anything silly.
Right, and he's got a pretty comfortable gap right now, so he's going to be kind of minimizing his risk and really just trying to make it all the way to the finish. And believe it or not, when you're up front in one of these races, 15 minutes goes by really slow whenever you're leading. And then if you're the car chasing, it's going by really fast. So it's funny how the time is pretty relative.
Well, every second counts. That's what CrowdStrike says, and I think that's true on the racetrack or off of it. Through turn number 7 now, there's the number 1 car. Martin Fuentes in the race lead for GT3 Pro-Am. James Safronis in behind, and Safronis was really aggressive yesterday late in the race. And this gap has fallen to basically under a second and a half now. And with 13 to go, and you mentioned, Kevin, how tight that's going to feel like. It's not going to feel like you have a lot of time, but we always say it's one thing to get there, a whole other thing to pass them. We talked about the passing difficulty. In the braking zones, turn 11 the best place to do this, or is there someplace else you'd rather take a pass?
Really, you're going to take any opportunity that comes, and hopefully the driver ahead of you makes just a tiny little mistake, maybe brakes a little late or gets in the power too early and spins the tires. And you're really looking for these little nuances and sizing up the car in front of you to try to kind of come up with where you have an advantage. There's not really going to be one specific place in the track that's going to be best for you. You really, it's all relative, and it really depends on the car in front of you.
And taking a look at the P1TS software here, we were talking about the 63 earlier in the race, again represented by the white line. That's the sister car, the DXDT Racing Machine, to the 04 of George Kurtz and Colin Brown. You can see their pace has fallen off a little bit in comparison to that 04 driven by George Kurtz, but the other car in front of the 04, that's the 24, the red line, is starting to just eke out a little bit, but still very close together. And I can tell you that that 63, the sister car, is coming back into the sights. of the 04 as we get down to the last couple minutes here, CJ.
Yeah, you can see that they're, it's essentially George is out there with his head down, going crazy fast, trying to make sure that he can make up as much of the time that they lost earlier on. And Ryan Dial handed off to David Askew, and David's been out there running really good lap times himself. So between the two DXDT cars, we actually have a really strong showing, but for that one half a second mistake that was there that cost them 46 seconds in the end. So every second counts for sure, and in this case, even split seconds.
And there is a fastest lap award that's presented by CrowdStrike as well to keep in mind. And Trent Hinman won that yesterday, and I think that team is still on par to get that again today. A 1:38.608, excuse me, is the best time that we've seen this race, driven by the 93 team. And I believe that was Trent Hinman earlier in the race. So there is Gandor and the 04 of Kurtz, and he's right on his tail as they head down into 9 here.
Yeah, you can see he's showing him up, putting the front of his car out there to make sure he gets in the mirrors to try to shake him up like we were talking about yesterday. Now he's trying to get in underneath his wing, try to use a little bit of that draft. You're going to get down into this braking zone. George is going to show him the nose and try to go deep. You can see actually a little bit of a defensive line there. He only moved once, so I think the stewards will be okay with that. And you see George try to cut under, and I think George definitely doesn't want to finish behind this car, so he's going to be out there, in attack mode, straight through to the end until he gets past him, and then even then he's going to try to set sail and move forward.
And Kevin, as a chasing driver, you were actually in this position earlier today in your TCA Honda Civic. Tell me a little bit about chasing and what you can do to maybe distract that lead driver and make him make a mistake.
Well, really, you want to make the driver ahead of you think that you're going to pass at any moment. So every time you get to a turn, every time you get to a brake zone, you do something that makes the driver check their mirrors. And what you're really trying to do is to distract them a little bit and make them drive a little bit slower. And hopefully you can use that to your advantage and kind of create a pass where in a situation where there might not have been one possible.
10 minutes to go in GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS and sponsored by CrowdStrike. Here is second place for overall position. Pourdad in the 20 and Martin Fuentes in behind in the number 1. And this continues to be a fight. Again, not for class position, and it looks like Fuentes has actually dropped off the tail a little bit there, CJ.
Yeah, I'm sure that the battle that they had earlier definitely took a good bit out of his tires. It actually seems also like Max or Pourdad actually has slowed down a good bit because he had pulled out a good bit of a gap on Fuentes. So between the two, it seems like the Porsches may be actually a little bit tougher on their tires and slowing down a bit, while the Ferrari seems to be moving forward.
And you can see there's George Kurtz again on the attack, going to driver's left in the braking zone, way up. He had overlap there for a moment. Now going to try to arc it in late and get the run out of the corner here, Kevin. We're just watching him just hound the back of this Ferrari, and it's getting really aggressive now.
That's right. It looks like George is a little bit quicker than the Ferrari right now, so he's really just trying to find a way by, and you see him kind of sizing up and trying to kind of go where the Ferrari isn't and use that to get some momentum to get by.
We just saw Colin Brown watching. And CJ, what's that like as co-driver watching your teammate attack like this? And how nervous are you watching someone else pilot your car?
Oh, you're crazy nervous, but in this case, when you have such good teammates, you actually are able to rely on them. You see a nice little battle here that continues on, and you see how close that as these two cars battle. James Sofronis is tightened right up to their back bumper. The other gentleman that was there on the screen was actually Ryan Dial. That's David Askew's co-driver. So the two pro drivers were there talking about how their stints went, and both essentially they didn't have their face mask on, probably biting their nails, waiting to see how this one plays out.
They need to make ones for race car drivers with a hole so you can get at your nails. I'm not sure it'd be very effective at that point. And while we're on that topic, I want to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 protocols that we've had here this weekend. And I've been really impressed. This is my first SRO America event, and this is not a great time in the world, but I think that SRO America has done an amazing job with requiring mask coverage, social distancing. Also, the Event Check app, we're using a third-party app that also runs on AWS servers that basically checks your proximity to other people and requires a survey and smartphone-based credentialing every morning. It's been a really neat, effective, and efficient way to do things this race weekend, and I think we're only going to see that prove to be more successful as the season finishes out here.
Absolutely. The SRO has been very strong in making sure that all of its staff, drivers, team members, and crew are staying safe, not only on the track, obviously, but also when it comes to its COVID-19 procedures. They actually have an entire document that calls out all the different procedures and things that's doing. You know, the Event Check is a great app that runs on AWS, like you said, that provides them the ability to make sure that you're taking the health questionnaires, basically to see if anyone has symptoms that may be COVID. And the last thing that we want to do is have anybody here that could spread that. And by being able to do the proximity checking, it also allows them to try to keep people away from each other, maintain the 6 feet. But even more so, one of the things it does is that if somebody were to come down with it, you'd be able to know who they were in contact with and make those notifications. So all in all, doing everything that we possibly can, or that the SRO possibly can, in order to keep us all safe, while at the same time continuing to live. And that's one of the things that all of us in the racing world want to do. Is we want to be able to continue to move forward and do the things that we all enjoy, as well as be able to reach out to our friends and customers as well. And right now we're doing a lot of virtual things. The Event Check is allowing us to do some of those things in person in order to be able to take things forward. You see this battle here is just continuing to heat up. This is going to be right down to the last to the checker flag.
And here's James Safronis attacking the back of that race leader in GT3 Pro-Am here, Kevin, and he's now hounding this Ferrari, and this is like throwing blood in the water. It's Great White Shark of Safronis now as they head down into 5. Oh, a mistake, a big mistake, and off the racetrack goes the race leader in GT3 Pro-Am, and Fuentes off in turn number 5 there, Kevin.
Yeah, you have to wonder if he has a problem with a tire or something like that, because that's a very strange place to go off like that. But that's sort of one of those things where you're dropping tires off the track, trying to push to the limit, and maybe you damage the tires a little bit.
And how fast that just went away from Fuentes. You see the mistake there at the exit of 3A, to slipping and sliding up over the crest of the hill, then into turn 4, turns in here, gets a run up off the corner, then right straight down into 5, and the car just went straight there, CJ. That could have been a cut tire, could have just been something else there as well.
I think it very much could have been a cut tire otherwise, but one of the things that I can see out of that is that if you look at it, it could also be what Kevin was talking about earlier. James was all over him, and obviously now they're prepping a tire, so he must have damaged a tire in that melee somehow.
Well, and that could be from a curb strike as well. We talked about how sharp some of the curbing is around here, Kevin, and you see the car looks like a right front tire might be down on this car, and that could be from a curb strike, that could be from debris on the track, from a lot of different things. But just like that, we are both of our race leaders first. It was Colin Brown and George Kurtz, and then Martin Fuentes in that number 1. That was teammates, of course, with Rodrigo Baptista. Both of our drivers that have led the majority of this race have had big issues, and that puts James Safronis out front with less than 5 minutes to go.
Right, and it's pretty. If you're the Fuentes here, it's really devastating to be less than 5 minutes to the end of the race and have an issue like this.
Well, you also have the other thing that you've actually just done is that the team car for George and Colin, David Askew, is now been promoted up into second place. So although George and Colin may not have the day that they wanted to have, I think the DXDT Racing will actually have a good showing here by getting promoted up into at least second place, and we still have time left. And as we've seen already, it's not over till the checker flag flies.
No, and it looks like they're adjusting something. Is there a broken piece of suspension in there, Kevin?
Yeah, it looked like a broken damper, so I'm not sure how that happened, but for sure that's a broken damper in the car. When they started to change the tire, the wheel was moving around, but the tire was actually still inflated.
Yeah, and this could have very well been from turn 9 and 9A, which has that gnarly curb on the inside. The drivers have been hammering all day long, and you're smashing the suspension up and down through that corners there, CJ, so that could be cause. But of course, mechanical failures can happen as well. But when you're beating on curbs all day, that could also be a big factor.
Yeah, the hammering on 9A and into or 9 and 9A. Also, we saw a little bit earlier they were pounding actually 7A on the back side of the straightaway, or in the back section as well. So between between those, it's one of those things that these are cars and they are mechanical, and you can only build them so strong and still be fast. So that's the trade-off that you have to have.
And you mentioned the 63, the other GXDT racing car. Kevin, earlier in the race, they were stuck behind the 1 and the 24, and now they've managed to leapfrog both of them and put themselves on the podium. And not only the podium, they put themselves in second place, the middle step of the podium. So this is going to be a great day for the 63 sister car on DXDT Racing to the 04. So I guess one man's bad race is often another man's good one. And here we see the 04 still working back over the 24, who's trying to get back by. So this has been a really interesting end of this race here with under 2 minutes to go.
Right, and I think this is a perfect example showing how hard it is to pass here. I think George has been on the bumper of this Ferrari for the last 15 or 20 minutes, and it's still not been able to find a way by. And it's not that that George isn't fast enough. It's just that the difference in speed is so small that it's hard to make an entire car length worth of advantage over the car in front of him.
Well, you mentioned that, it's not that he's not fast enough. You're right. He was 4/10 quicker last time by, but if there's a car in front of you and you can't get around it, you're going to go nowhere there, CJ.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're actually, one of the things you see here is that George snugs up during those sections that are, tight, and he can use the downforce that the Mercedes has. You can see George's car stepping out just a little bit. He's trying to get to the throttle as soon as he can, but getting the power down seems to be a little bit of a challenge on these older, pretty much spent tires. So we're coming down right to the end, and George is going to try to put the 04 car on the podium.
Oh, big cut there over 9.
Yeah.
That's a massive cut, and the race control will be looking at that maybe, and usually issuing a warning or a penalty for that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the areas they've been pretty strict with us, is that in 9 you're not supposed to go into the sand behind it, but we'll have to see if that actually race control actually calls that or not.
You see tire marks being left behind that Mercedes AMG as it powers up out of the corner. That big engine there, CJ, a lot of torque in it, and it's leaving black marks as he's trying to chase down this Ferrari.
George is doing everything he possibly can, working all the angles and using all the torque and power that they have. And I think he's also going to use a lot of those brakes that he has in order to be able to try to outbrake and get inside of that 24 car, because he wants to be he wants to have an all second and third place on the podium with the XDT.
Shelby Blackstock in the number 93 Racer's Edge car comes across the start-finish line. That will be white flag for him here, Kevin. So this team, again, rebounding from the mistake that they had yesterday, coming in pit lane too early. It looks like it's all going to come back and help them grab a victory here today.
That's right, and that's a pretty big redemption for what happened at the race yesterday. But there's still a little bit of nervousness when you're on your final lap, because just like the Ferrari had a failure, you're always a little bit nervous that something could happen. So just want to nurse it around and make it to the finish.
Right, and with that, again, the 93 is almost caught all the way back around to the 04 and the 24. So they've almost got 2 full laps left, more like a lap and a half now to do battle. That means 2 more times through turn 9. And, usually race control will give you a couple lenient times to kind of do a little bit of a course cut. You do it 2 or 3 more times, they're going to start yelling at you there, CJ.
Yeah, without a doubt. They a lot of times on the first infraction they'll give you a warning. But if you're using it to competitive advantage, I think they'll be a little less lenient with that. You can see that George is fallen off of just a little bit, and chances are he's smoked the tires trying to get by that Ferrari, especially being so close. The aero when you're so close, it's to your advantage in a straightaway. It's to your disadvantage when you're going through the curves, because you don't have as much downforce on the car. Therefore, your tires are actually not able to use the grip that the aero is providing.
It was disaster yesterday for Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman, but it's going to be victory today as they come through turns number 11 and 12, lighten up those rear tires of that NSX platform. And yesterday, a pit road violation. Today, the top of the podium for the 93, Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman for Racers Edge Motorsports. A win at Sonoma for them. For second place, it's Portad in the number 20 in the GT3 AM class, looking to hang on to second overall. Then behind him, for third overall and for first in GT3 Pro-Am, it's James Safronis and David Askew in the 63 DXDT Racing car. Whoa, big slip up for the 24, and Gandor's wide. Here comes the 04, Kurt's to the inside. Side by side on the backstretch towards turn number 7, and Kurt is through. What a move there by the 04.
It's amazing. George, Gandor just made one little mistake, and he took it, and now he's going to try to stuff it right in here on George on the inside.
Oh, he turns him!
He turned him!
He looped him around, and a huge opportunity for Gandor to get up in there, but it was too aggressive, guys. He just stuck the nose down in there too deep, turned around Kurtz. That will almost certainly be a penalty drawn for Gandor. We'll see what race control has to say about that.
Yeah, race control isn't going to look fondly upon that interaction, I'm sure, and I don't think George is too pleased right now either.
No, and again, that was a mistake by Gandor that put Kurtz up alongside. But for the other team car, the DXDT Racing 63, that's David Askew. He's going to come through, take second in GT3 Pro-Am. That is a podium for him. And for podium in GT3 Pro-Am, it looks like it's going to be Gandor for now, unofficially. But now, Kevin, I want your opinion as a racing driver. You saw the mistake by Gandor. He lost the spot, gets up alongside into the hairpin, but is that too aggressive, or is that the 04 maybe coming down across the racetrack?
Yeah, that was an awfully aggressive move. He didn't really have his nose far enough along the Mercedes, in my opinion. I think that line sort of belonged to George there.
Sure.
So it's as we look at it again, it's that was definitely a very, very aggressive move.
Yeah, here's a look at it, and the 24 kind of arcs it in a little bit late, comes up underneath, and is he alongside enough? Not for me, guys. You got to be alongside into the braking zone. Climbs up on the curb. He's off the racetrack at that point. Yellow line denotes the edge of the track. Too far in, turns Kurtz around, and I'm sure we're going to wait for an official call on that. But for Shelby Blackstock, nothing to wait for other than a trophy in his hands as he comes on through into pit lane, and Trent Hinman wins the CrowdStrike Fastest Lap Award of 138.608. So some more drama in this race, guys. SRO America's GT World Challenge America does not disappoint. Another good race today, but for Kurtz and Gandor, a little bit of drama on that last lap.
Yeah, this will be one of those races that, at least for a little while here, I have a feeling we won't know actually who did end up on the podium. Gandor may end up there for right now, but I have a feeling there's going to be a good bit of discussion, because at the end of the race, it's hard for race control to be able to make those calls right away. You know, in our experience and seeing these types of things, it is a judgment call, and they actually have, as part of the race control, they actually have a race steward that will actually take a look at that, racing drivers themselves, to see if that was a clean move or not. You know, if I were in that position, I don't think right now I'd call it a clean move, because there was no track or line there for him to go. He would have had to go straight up and over that berm, and that's not an appropriate place to be.
Right, and of course. And I think there is, Kevin, in your mind, is there racing incidents, or is everything always someone's fault? I guess that this, in my opinion, is not a racing incident, but I'm curious what your opinion is on, is it always someone's fault, or is there always something someone can do to avoid a crash, or are there some things that are just unavoidable?
There's every now and then there's something that's unavoidable, like if you slide the car a little bit and then you make contact with another car, but when you're attempting a pass like that, there's kind of a decision matrix that's going on inside your head as a driver, and you're clearly making a decision to kind of make a pass or not. So I'm not sure I would consider that a racing incident. I think that was maybe a little bit too aggressive for that particular part of the track.
Absolutely, and while we wait for post-race interviews here, guys, let's kind of recap the last couple of days. Yesterday we saw penalties and caution flag be the topic of discussion. Today, the same deal. We also had some mechanical failures for the number 1 team that put them at the bottom of the order in GT3 Pro-Am. But for David Askew in the 63, along with co-driver Ryan Dial, they rebounded for second place. That's middle step of the podium for them, and they got to be thrilled with that performance.
They're going to be completely thrilled, because they weren't happy with the pace of the car in practice and struggled, and the team really rebuilt the underside of that car, suspension and otherwise. I think that that'll all now be worth it with bringing the 63 car home. So I think David Askew and Ryan Dial, as well as the entire DXDT Racing team, will be very happy. I think there'll be, as you said, some controversy still with who finishes third. Is it another DXDT car in the form of George Kurtz and Colin Brown, or do the race stewards, the race control, actually believe that was an acceptable means of pass?
Yeah, I can tell you that typically we'd have the results showing on the broadcast. Right now we do not have those yet. So that tells me that there's some discussion happening. On the left, oh, here we go. Let's take a look here and see if there's been any ruling. And so far, we probably wouldn't see how this is going to be ruled here. Where is the
6th overall?
So let's see, 6th. So it doesn't look like it's been adjusted yet, and I'm not sure if that will happen post-race or not. These are always unofficial. So as we mentioned this, we also had a great opportunity to use the P1TS software to kind of analyze this race in depth and take a look at a lot of lap time data, sector data, all running in the AWS cloud in real time, CJ. Such an impressive piece of kit. and really helped me understand what was going on out there and make this race even more interesting than it already was.
Yeah, absolutely. As just regular race fans watching from home, you get the data that's presented on the screen. But if you're a racer or are really into data, like a lot of us are, to be able to see, who's closing on who, how, what's the opportunity if you pit now to be able to come out on the other side and be in clean air and ultimately ahead. This is the kind of thing that you need. Right now, this is stuff that's used, Ken software, P1PS, used by a lot of the crew chiefs, not only here in the SRO, but also in other racing series. It's been a great thing for those of us that race, but also when I'm not even at the racetrack, I love to use it because it gives me all the data so that I can dig in and figure out where things are going. Using the same type of technology and with Ken's help, we want to bring some of that innovation to the screen so that you don't only have to have a second screen version, which is essentially what we're doing here and showing all of our viewers. But we want to be able to go ahead and pull some of that data and put it onto the screen. Not all everything that Ken has here, but actually some of the conclusions that Ken's data provides for us, so that you can see the lap battles and the lap battle forecasts and things like that. I think that that near real-time capability that AWS is providing and Ken's using very effectively is what we want to see, in the broadcasts as we go forward.
And again, we're watching just the highlight reel on the bottom right there. It was Shelby Blackstock and Trent Hinman who recovered after yesterday's issues, and there's the move again down the inside, up over the top of Boehm, looping around the 04 CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes. Still waiting on the official call, the results, but I don't think we're going to see those in the time of the broadcast here. This is going to be a discussion that probably it's going to continue for the rest of the weekend, I would imagine. And again, not an easy thing for the race control stewards to decide either. There's a lot of different angles to take on a lot of these issues as well. So while we wait, again, thanks again, guys, for joining us. We're not quite done yet, but thank you again for joining me this weekend, both CJ Moses and Kevin Boehm. You guys have been awesome. You guys racing drivers this weekend, kind of pulling double duty in the booth here, so I appreciate you taking your time. This has been a lot of fun for me to come out here to Sonoma and check this out, but the data that we've been able to analyze is so interesting behind the scenes, and CrowdStrike and AWS's commitment to SRO America has been fascinating because of how awesome all these things come together to make such a unique racing series where we can really dive deep in a way that I've never seen before. So this is a really cool opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for coming and doing this. It's been a blast for me to be able to do this. Get to look at it from a different perspective, that's for sure. Used to being in the car or even watching other classes from the sidelines, but to be able to see use of the data in a different way and to bring that to all of the viewers has been a great time.
Yeah, this has been a really joy to jump in the booth and kind of see the race unfold from a different perspective. I normally get to see it out the windshield, but kind of watching it on the screen here and looking at all the data, it's definitely a really exciting way to watch these races happen in real time.
I'll trade you if you want. I'll take a trip behind the wheel for a little bit if you're interested in that. And again, thanks to AWS, the title presenter for the Global SRO Series. And for 13 years, AWS has been the world's most comprehensive and broadly adopted cloud platform, offering over 175 fully featured cloud computing services. Last year, the firm entered into a new collaboration that saw AWS become the official cloud and machine learning provider for SRO America, as well as a series partner of Pirelli GT4 America and TC America. And of course, CrowdStrike and CrowdStrike Racing this weekend being so accommodating. CrowdStrike is the official internet and cloud security provider of SRO Americas and is the presenting sponsor of the Sonoma Race Weekend. Again, a home race for those guys here this week. And guys, thank you again so much. We're still waiting for post-race interviews here. The cars coming back down to pit lane. It has been an awesome weekend here. We've also got Road America coming up in a couple weeks. The National Park of Speed up there in Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, CJ. That's a whole different racetrack, a whole different layout. 4 miles of road racing up there per lap. That's a big one.
Yeah, it's a very different type of track than we have here at Sonoma. As we talked about here, we didn't have a lot of straightaway. At Road America, you have 2 very large straightaways, some of the longest, here in the United States. But those two large straightaways are also come with a good bit of elevation change. The front straightaway is essentially climbing a mountain. You're looking at the sky as you're coming up. But you also have carousels similar to Turn 6 here. You actually have a carousel at Road America. So there is a lot of technical and twisty bits to Road America. but at the same time, you're going to see some of the highest speeds that we see all season. So we're waiting for post-race interviews still, but I think that's going to wrap up at least this portion. I'll let you guys go because I'm sure you guys have
and we'll
some pack-up to do.
with our AM winners, who ended up second
victory
overall,
circle
Fred
there.
Pordad. What
we'll
an
finish
amazing
up here in a moment.
stint you had there at the end with some highly experienced GT3 racers you had to keep at bay.
Yeah, it was a great run. Wright Motorsports gave us an awesome car today. It was really a pleasure to drive. I felt more comfortable today than yesterday. And after Max's first stint, man, I had to live up to that challenge because he got us in a great position, and it was all I could do to hold those guys off. And I'm very pleased with our outcome this weekend.
Great job by you, by Max, and the whole Wright Motorsports team. Congratulations. We'll have you step over to the side, and we'll continue more a little bit later. Overall winners and a little bit of catharsis, I have to believe, for the Racers Edge team. Trent Hedman, how good does it feel to put yesterday's disappointment behind you?
Ryan, it's awesome. I mean, we had 3 not so ideal races in a row, especially going back to VIR a couple weeks ago. Felt like we had a really good shot at 2 wins there. You know, just factors outside of our control got in the way. Same deal yesterday. Not a whole lot you're going to do. Just an honest mistake by us as a team, but I'm really proud to be a part of this Racers Edge Motorsports crew. I mean, they gave us a fantastic Acura NSX GT3. Obviously, Shelby did a hell of a job in the race there and qualifying as well. But the biggest thing is the way this whole team, you know, put yesterday beside us, put VIR beside us, put their heads right back down, and we got back to work and got a win again today. So it's good. We just got to keep this going. We got to make sure that we learn from these past mistakes and continue moving forward.
All right, great, really good job today. Congratulations.
Thanks, Ryan.
And we now have official results. Penalty for the number 24 of Gandor. He's moved back 1 position after the contact with the 04 CrowdStrike AWS Mercedes. That will put him, it looks like, in right behind the 04, moving the 04 up onto the podium for GT3 Pro-Am. That's going to do it for us this afternoon from Sonoma Raceway in the Sonoma Valley. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by, of course, Kevin Boehm and CJ Moses. We'll see you again at Road America. Thanks so much, and have a great week. Hello, I'm CJ Moses, the Deputy Chief Information Security Officer for Amazon Web Services. Coming on as title sponsor with the SRO has allowed us to create new innovation, to use our technologies in ways they've never been used before. The cloud is very capable. All of these 195 services that we offer provide vast different capabilities, but customers come up with even better ways to use it than we ever thought of. In the case of the SRO, we're going to be bringing better experiences through to the TV itself. Second screen experiences where we're going to be doing a lot of predictive analytics and things like that. These are the types of things that we want to see our customers from AWS actually do, and by partnering with the SRO, we're introducing it to a whole new venue and to sports cars. We're bringing a lot of excitement to it as well. And when you have excited fans that are getting a better experience and we're able to showcase the technology that AWS has doing that, I think it's a win-win for SRO, for us, and for the fans that are actually engaged in the watching of the event.